Well, welcome to Data-Focused Python in spring of 2021. In this video, I want to show you how to download and install Anaconda 2020.11, which is a package that includes a very recent version of the Python language and its libraries that we will be using for our Data-Focused Python courses. So I'm going to pull up a browser. I happen to be using a Chrome browser. Here we go. And step one is we're going to go to anaconda.com/download. Okay? That may be in a font that's a little hard for you to read, but it's Anaconda, ANACONDA, .com/download. And when I press enter, I get the screen saying your data science toolkit. Okay, so this is advertising stuff that you don't really need to read. And this is the individual edition. There are various levels of editions of Anaconda, mostly for commercial and large group use that you have to pay for. But for the individual edition for academic use, it's free. So we'll just click the download button here. And since I'm using Chrome, I'm going to see this downloading in the lower left corner of my screen. Oops, premature there. Okay, so when I press download, I get down to choosing which installer I want. You can install it for either Windows or Mac or Linux. Most of you, I expect, are using Windows or Mac. If you're using the Mac, you can download the graphical installer, and that will look very similar to what I'm showing here for Windows 10. In Windows 10, which is what I'm using, since we're using a 64-bit system, I'm going to choose the 64-bit graphic installer. And by the way, the version of Python that we're going to be getting here is Python 3.8. All right, so now I'll click this button to download the graphical installer, and we'll see the download happening in the lower left corner. There we go. It takes a little while. It's a pretty big setup executable. Chug, chug. All right, so it finally completed. And, okay, if you're using Anaconda in a commercial environment with more than 200 employees, you have to pay for it. But we don't have to pay for it. So we'll just go to the folder containing this Anaconda installation executable. For me, that's my downloads folder. Let me pull that over here. Okay, so here's my personal downloads folder, and here's the Anaconda 3-2020.11 installer application. I'm going to double-click that application now. And the app you're trying to install isn't a Microsoft verified app. Installing apps from the store. I don't want to get an app from a store. I'm going to just click this change my app recommendation. And change that to anywhere. You may not need to go through this gymnastics. I guess Microsoft is upset with me for not using the store. Let me run the application again. Okay, here we go. Okay, so after I persuaded Microsoft that I wasn't interested in using the the store, I got this Welcome to Anaconda 3 2020.11 setup screen, and I can just click Next. End user agreement, I'm going to agree, so click I agree. And I'm going to install it just for me since I'm using a Windows box. Choose install location. I'm quite happy with the default, so I'll click Next. Now, advanced installation options. I'm given the option of adding Anaconda 3 to my path environment variable, but it says here that this is not recommended, so I'm going to leave that unchecked. I am going to leave register Anaconda 3 as my default Python 3.8. I am going to leave that choice checked, and I'll click Install. All right, so we're chugging away. This may take a little while, so I may just clip out some delay time here. Okay, so that took a couple minutes, but now it's completed, so I'm going to click Next. All right, working with Python and Jupyter Notebooks is a breeze with Pycharm. So you're given an opportunity here to download and install Pycharm, which is an integrated development environment, if you wish, and you can click on this link to go to Pycharm. Pycharm is great. There's also a very nice integrated development environment called Spider that just comes as part of the Anaconda download. So I'm going to skip installation of Pycharm and click Next. Thank you for installing Anaconda Individual Edition. Here are some helpful tips and resources. If you'd like to read through these tips and resources, you can leave these checked, and those will get pulled up and you can read through them. But I'm going to try to give you a brief but complete enough sort of tutorial about accessing Python through Anaconda. So I'm going to uncheck both of these boxes and click Finish. And there we are. So now I can close my browser. When I go to my Start menu, I'll be shown in my Start menu Anaconda 3 as a folder. And if I click the arrow next to that to show the subcomponents, there are quite a number. I'm going to pull down so that we can see them all. There is an Anaconda Navigator, which is simply a collection of buttons on the screen that I can click to run various applications. There is an Anaconda Prompt, which will give me a command.com style interface for interacting with Python or Anaconda. I can also create Jupyter Notebooks, and I can launch the Spider integrated development environment. The two things that I am most interested in are having an Anaconda prompt. Now, I unpinned my old Anaconda prompt there to make sure that I wasn't conflicting with some previous version. So what I want to do is come down to where it says Anaconda Prompt, and I'm going to pin that into my Start menu. So I right-click and click on Pin to Start. There we go. I'm going to drag some of these other things down. Alrighty. And I also want to pin Spider to my Start menu. And I have to drag that up to the correct place. Good heavens, where did it go? Where is Spider? Maybe I missed it. So I'm going to go to Spider and right-click, pin to start. Oh, there it is. All right. I must not have clicked it correctly. And I want to drag that up next to my, or I'll put it right underneath my Anaconda prompt. All right, so now I have my Anaconda terminal prompt in my start menu, as well as my launch icon for Spider. Since I'm going to use these a lot, I also want to put those right on the taskbar. So let me also right-click on Anaconda Prompt, and in More, I'm going to click Pin to Taskbar. All right, so there's my Anaconda Prompt right in my taskbar now. I'm going to do the same thing with Spider. I will right-click, go to More, and click Pin to Taskbar. And now I have Spider in my taskbar as well. Okay, so now we have convenient access set up for interacting with Python using the Anaconda command prompt or Spider. I'm going to start with the Anaconda command prompt. I'll click that prompt icon, Anaconda prompt icon in my taskbar. And here it is. Now, the default is white text on a black background. I prefer the opposite. I prefer to have black text on a white background, in part because when I make screenshots and produce slides, your printer doesn't have to print all kinds of black. All right, so let me right-click on the title bar, click Properties. I'm going to go to Colors, and I'm going to say Screen Text is 0. Screen text is black. I'm going to click on black. Screen background is, and I'm going to click on white. There we go, and I'll click OK. Why didn't that work? Interesting. Maybe it's going to force me to close and relaunch my window. That seems strange. Okay, so I had to close and relaunch my window. That's a little strange. I'm also, you don't need to do this, but I'm going to increase my font size so that it's easier for you to see what I'm up to here. All right, so under font, I've chosen 36 as my font size. And there we are. Okay. So the simplest available editor for interacting with both the Python shell and for editing files is something called idle. So we can launch idle from this terminal. And by the way, in the Mac, what you want to do is to launch the Anaconda Navigator, and you can select a terminal or idle from within the Anaconda Navigator. All right, so here on Windows 10, to start idle, I just type idle as my command. And here we are. What I get is this very plain-looking window telling me that I'm running Python version 3.8.5. The 3 greater than symbols here, this is the prompt. And what's happening is that the Python shell is waiting for me now to type Python code that it will execute. For example, I can just type, well, let me create a variable a, and into that I'm going to have the variable a refer to a value 1234. To display the value of that variable a, or technically the value that a refers to, at my shell prompt, I can just type the name of that variable, and I'll see what value it contains. I can do arithmetic. Let me create a new variable called b, which is going to refer to a times 2. All right, so that gets the value that a refers to, multiplies it by 2, stores the result into b. and so on. If I want to get out of idle, I can run quit. And when I do this, okay, it turns out that quit is a function. And in order to quit from this shell, it's telling me use quit with parentheses or Control Z and return. So this is kind of stupid because it knows what I'm trying to do, but it won't let me do it. So I'm going to have to type quit and parentheses as well in order to get out of that Python shell back to my Anaconda terminal. Now let me show you another thing about idle, that in addition to interacting with the Python shell, I can create a Python program file by clicking File, New File, and in here I can write Python statements like A gets 1234, B gets A times 2. Unlike the shell, which I can just type A in order to see what A contains, or type B to see what B refers to, in a program I have to use a function named print to print out stuff I want to see on the screen. So I'm going to print the value of A, and I'm also going to print the value of B. These things in double quotes are called strings, and the strings are simply printed as is on the screen. So I'm going to see A colon, and then by default I get a space between that string and this variable A. So I'm going to print A colon and a space on the value that A refers to, then B colon and a space on the value that B refers to. Now I'm not going to be able to run this. You see there's a choice up here that says run module. I'm not going to be able to run this until I give the thing a name. So I'm going to say File, Save As, and let me find a reasonable place for doing this. I'm going to go to, I'll do this in my downloads directory. It doesn't matter that much. And I'm just going to call this thing prog1. Okay, so I've given the name prog1, and I'm going to hit save. You may not be able to read this, but up in the title bar of my editor, it now says that this file is called prog1.py. And now I can say run module, click run and click run module, and yay! I get told that A refers to a value 1234, B refers to a value 2468. All right, well, we're going to be doing things that are just a bit more sophisticated than this. But that's pretty much all that you need to know about idle in order to be able to use idle to execute Python code and also create Python code files. All right, so I'm going to close this file, and I'm going to close this shell as well. Let me, as an alternative to idle, idle is very simple-minded. It's sort of like using Notepad, just a very simple-minded editor to create programs. Most people would prefer a more full-featured kind of environment, and that's what we will get with Spider. So I'm going to click on my Spider icon in my taskbar, and Spider takes a little while to start up, so we'll see how old we get waiting for Spider. There we go, Spider 4. It's trying to come up. Ah, there we go. Not too bad. Now it came up on a different screen. It's telling me Spider 4.2.0 is available. I don't really care. I'm going to close that window, which conveniently you can't see, and move Spider over to this screen. All right, so there we have Spider, and there was a little window that showed up here in the center telling me that a new version of Spider is available. Now, in Spider's screen, there are two primary windows. In the lower right side is the shell window. This is similar to the 3 greater than signs that I had in the idle shell, except in Spider, in this console, each Python code statement that you'd write is numbered, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. So if I say A gets 1234 here, and B gets A times 2, you can see it counts up the number of Python statements that I've typed so far. I can, because this is a shell, just type the name of a variable to see the value that it's referring to. So I'll type A, and I get told that's 1234. And if I type B, I get told that's 2468. On the left side is a text editor. And this is a smarter text editor than the very simple-minded editor built into idle. It starts me out with a simple default program that just uses the print function to display the string hello world. You may not be able to see the name of this file, but in very tiny print in the upper left corner, Spider is telling me this thing is /users, /jocelyn, /.spiderpy3, temp.py. All right, so I can say file. Well, I was going to click save, but apparently it's already been saved, so I don't need to save it. And now I'm going to say run. Notice that as a shortcut for run, and similarly in idle as a shortcut for run module, you can press the F5 key instead. All right, so I'm going to say run, and what happens is that the program is executed in the console window. I see which file was executed, and here's the output produced by that program. Okay, so print of a string just displays as that string on the screen. So in many ways, this is much more convenient than idle. The editor is much more fully featured, and you can see both the editor and the shell simultaneously on a single screen. However, Spider does have all of these icons and menus and all of this tiny font and whatnot. So although I strongly encourage you to use Spider for your own programming, in my lecture videos, I'm going to use idle precisely because it is so simple. And it's easier to read in a video when I'm using Spider as opposed to, I'm sorry, I said that backwards. It's easier in a video for you to see what I'm doing when I'm using idle rather than when I'm using Spider and I have all this extra stuff on my screen. Okay, so there is a quick introduction to idle and a quick introduction to Spider. I'm going to close Spider now. I can either go over to File and choose Quit, or I can just press the X in the upper right corner, whichever. And there we are. I do want to show, especially for people using a Mac, let me go back to the Anaconda choices here. The Anaconda Navigator simply creates a little panel after a certain amount of hiccuping, apparently. Come on now. Loading content, loading stuff, blah, blah, blah. Here we go. So when you click on Anaconda Navigator, you get this panel of buttons that allow you to execute basically the same stuff that in Windows you can execute out of the Start menu. Okay? So I can execute Spider from in here. I can execute a command prompt from in here. In a Mac, the choices here will be similar, but not exactly the same. Now, another thing I want to warn you about on a Mac is that many people on a Mac who have attempted to use idle have discovered that idle actually reboots the system. And we've never been able to figure out why this is the case. But on a Mac, you might really want to avoid using idle so that you don't risk crashing your machine, and use Spider right from the outset on a Mac. Okay, so I'm going to close Anaconda Navigator. Quit Anaconda Navigator. I'm going to say yes. And I'll close my Anaconda Prompt window. Okay, so there we go. We've shown how to download and install Anaconda. We did it on Windows 10, but the procedure is quite similar on a Mac. On a Mac, instead of a start menu, I encourage you to use the Anaconda Navigator panel. And on a Mac, stay away from trying to use idle. Instead, just use Spider from the outset. And on Windows, we showed how to use idle, and we also showed how to use Spider. So you should at least be able to get started with the very basic stuff. Okay, that's that.